All right, guys. Good morning. How we doing today? We're getting ready to start the straightening on the quarter panel and the straightening on the front door of the Lexus. And I just want to show you guys a little bit about what I did to help you see the damage, because I know this is a light colored vehicle. We're in my shop that obviously is a little bit dark, so I tried to do a few things to help you see what we're doing. So you see I've got the damage circled on the quarter, and I have a D where the impact was. That's your direct damage. So the D is there to represent direct damage for you. Maybe if Rosalinda tries to get it a little bit of an angle, I'm going to clean the auto rider off the car, and hopefully you'll be able to see these are minor dents, so they don't have a lot of indirect damage, which the indirect damage is when a panel is impacted and it goes in from the direct damage. Another area around that spot where the metal could swell or become disshaped. So we've got direct damage and the possibility of indirect damage. And you'll have a better example of indirect damage when I go over and show you the door. But let me go ahead and get this cleaned off, and then we'll go look at the door, and then I'm gonna start the repair process where we will, normally you can use a shark or a dent puller where you can just gently pull out the dents, or in this case I'm gonna use a stud gun, because that's the equipment I have here at the shop, because it's a little bit more versatile for me than just a dent puller. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of lacquer thinner to clean off the auto rider, and hopefully you guys can see there was a dent right here. It looked like somebody probably just opened their car door up into it. So there's a small dent right there that's pretty minor. It doesn't really even need to be pulled out. We'll just fill that dent because it's so small. Down here, it's a little bit more significant. You can actually see the red transfer from another vehicle where they opened their door or whatever they did into the side of this car. And it's right on the creased body line. So it actually pushed it in pretty good right there. And we'll have to clean this area, apply a stud, and pull it back out prior to repair with product. So let me go ahead and clean that off too. All right, so the auto rider's gone. Now you can see the red from another vehicle. A little more thinner will probably take that right off. Right, so that's pretty significant direct damage right on that body line. If you get down, maybe Rosalinda will move the camera around in a couple different ways, but you can see right on that line, it really creased in. And there is actually a little bit of indirect damage, slight bulging down here. And when we pull that out, we'll work that area a little bit with our hammer to get rid of that. Let's take a quick walk over to the driver's side. Hopefully you can see the damage on this a little bit better. So we've got direct damage and indirect damage. So right here is obviously where the vehicle was hit and it was pushed in pretty good. And what happened when the vehicle went in here, you have an intrusion beam that runs through the inside of the door. That's what keeps you safe in an accident. So it's a big steel beam inside there with different spots of glue on it. When this pushed in, the metal that was the door skin, the steel part of the door skin that was attached to the intrusion beam with adhesive actually pushed out from this going in. So that's your indirect damage. It wasn't exactly hit right here, it was hit here. But when it went in, it actually pushed out and made outward dents. So instead of being a lower recessed area, you have a pushed out area. And when we clean it up, we're gonna look down the side of the vehicle. Hopefully you can see, because there's like 1, 2, 3 big knots pushing out on the side of this vehicle. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean the auto rider off of it now. And hopefully, I know we have limited light, but hopefully you'll be able to see the direct and indirect damage on the car on this side quite a bit better than the other side. So there's our direct damage. Pretty good crease right down here. This is where the panel got pushed in, okay? And then of course down here is our indirect damage, and that's where the intrusion beam pushed out. So as you can see, and if you get down and really look from a side standpoint at that glare, you should be able to see pretty well the direct and indirect damage. So pushed in here, you've got an out dent right here, an out dent right here, and another one right here. So 3 out areas. So when I pull this dent out, I'm going to make sure that I take my hammer and work these high areas back down. We want to get rid of that indirect damage. The other thing you have to make sure of is when you're sanding on this panel, where those glue spots are that pushed out, if you run your 900 or your tool, your DA on it too much and get the skin heated up, they can actually swell back up and bring the high area back out. So we want to make sure that we use fresh, sharp sandpaper and we don't run our machine too fast to create more damage by swelling that metal. By superheating it, getting it hot, will tend to make it swell. So we want to make sure after we tap these spots down that we don't heat them up when we sand it down. It's actually going to be better for us if they're just a little bit low, because we're going to end up putting product over this anyways. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and prepare the car to be able to put some studs on it. We have our stud gun over in the toolbox that I'm going to grab and bring over here. But first I'm going to get the door and the quarter ready for me to go ahead and apply the studs to them. So basically all I need is to have a good ground so that the stud will apply. Helps if you have your air on. So we'll go ahead and clean this area. You notice when I clean the area, it really shows you that low depressed area a lot better. That's where I want my stud to be, so I have to make sure I remove all the paint from it. I'm using a 50 grit grinding disc because I don't want to really grind any of the metal away, just the paint. I don't want to make that metal become thin. All right, so that's still a little low there. All right, that one's good to go. Now we're going to go over and hit the driver's door. So on this one, then I actually have a little door ding right here. I want to make sure that I catch that door ding while I'm here. Actually 2 of them. So I'm going to just make a mark there so I don't forget that they're there when I'm spreading product. See how the paint comes right off, but there's still E-coat there. We want to make sure we get that E-coat off, because when we try to apply our studs, they're not going to want to make good enough contact. They won't weld to the car. So you want to have bare metal, so you got to make sure you get all that E-coat off. right, that should be pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and get the stud gun. On the quarter panel, we'll actually use the slide hammer, which is just like tapping it from the inside, but with a stud attached to the outside. And on this side, I'm just gonna use a pull hook where I apply pressure with my arm, just pulling this metal out while I tap these high spots back down at the same time. This is our stud gun, and actually what it does is take these metal studs and apply them to the vehicle. Then you can either use a slide hammer, which is what I'll use on this side, or you can use a pull hook, which is what I'm going to use on the other side, to attach to the studs. The pull hook, the stud, it'll slide over the stud. Goes in like that. You attach it like that, and the teeth on the gear grab the stud so that you can pull it, and then you just push it back up to release. The slide hammer has teeth inside it, and it tightens on the stud to pull it. So two different ways. This is for a little bit more of a crease or more damage, where the pull hook is more for applying pressure and getting that metal to come out where you want it to come. Insert your pin. Make sure you know where you want to pull. Good contact, and quick squeeze, and it's attached. Okay, it just welded itself to the car. Now I definitely want to have a stud right on that body line, because that's where I want most of my damage to be pulled out from. And that's where we'll pull with the slide hammer. So I'm going to go ahead and work this area before I switch to the other side. With the slide hammer, we're just going to slide it on our stud, hold the handle and tighten from here. Once it gets a good bite on it, slide your weight, tap it out just a little bit. Then hold it and release, comes right off. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. This one's a little more significant. Extra tighten sometimes. Get that pulled right out. Now I do want to work any indirect area of damage, so I'm going to keep pressure on it with my body, and I'm going to tap lightly the area around the dent where it probably bulged a little bit. Once we're done, I'm going to release, and then I need to grab a pair of channel locks and remove those studs. So with my channel locks, I want to make sure that I grab the stud by the ball tip, get a good bite on it, and just a quick wiggle, and they come right off. The whole stud's completely gone. Again, quick wiggle, right off. At that point, I'm ready to touch those two areas lightly with my grinder, feather this out, and apply product on it. Okay, so on this side, we're going to attach a few studs so that I can pull the dent out. Hopefully, I'll be able to work these high spots down just by applying the pressure to the low area. If I can't, I may actually have to apply a stud in one or two places where I can keep outward pressure on this panel while I'm tapping these high spots down. As you can see, when I put the studs on, this panel is really flexible. So whatever hit this may not have actually hit it too hard, but it pushed that panel in so far that it really allowed this to bulge. And you can see how it's still likes to flex quite a bit. Hopefully a lot of the tension will come back into the panel once we get everything pulled out. If it gets stretched too much from being bulged out down here, we may have to shrink the panel a little bit, and we'll put a different attachment on our stinger and actually superheat the panel in a few spots, which will make that metal heat real hot and then shrink when it cools, which will give us some strength back in the panel. Hopefully we don't have to do that, but you never know. You never know until you try. So I'm gonna bite onto my stud, and then I can pull with my body. I usually use my body for leverage to pull that low area out. Quick little jiggle, and it's released. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing, working my way down and pull that out. You can see how I'm getting that panel to move outward. I'm gonna pull that out a little bit, apply some pressure, and work my indirect area of my dent. And I'm gonna start trying to work some of these high spots down while I have pressure pulling out from up top. There's a definite thud on those high areas where I'm hitting. That's because of the glue that's glued to the outer panel where it's attached to the intrusion bar. So that's why it sounds so solid right there. You notice I'm using my hand because I want to feel those high spots. Sometimes you can't see them, but you want to be able to feel them because in a certain light outside, you'll still be able to see them. Like I said, if I make them a little bit low, that's okay. I just don't want to cave it in by any means. So let's get our studs off. Again, we're going to bite our studs, give them a wiggle, they come right off. One thing you want to make sure you remember to do is take your little grinder and hit those little burn areas. You don't want to put product over a plain burn area. It will rust. So you want it to go back to bare metal without that burned look on it. So I would want to take my grinder and clean off any of those little burn marks. I'm going to go over to the other side and hit those as well, and then we're going to go ahead and take a 900 and sand the panels, get them ready for some product to go on them.